There are cheat codes for fantasy football, and if you use these 3 simple tricks, you'll significantly increase your chances of winning. Let me explain. Let's start with the wide receiver cheat codes, and they're simple. There's 2 of them. First of all, the red zone targets. You want guys with heavy red zone targets, and these are last year's leaders in that category. And the second part to the wide receiver cheat codes is downfield usage. It's a massive cheat code, and these are last year's leaders in that category. Jamar Chase, Tyler Lockett, Justin Jefferson, Devonta Smith, and Terry McLaurin top 5. Now, the following wide receiver fits this cheat code description, and that's because Chargers wide receiver Mike Williams last year, he earned 23 red zone targets, top 10 in the NFL. But that's not all. Out of those 23 red zone targets, 8 of them were within 5 yards of the end zone. Only Cooper Kupp had more last year. So Justin Herbert was leaning on him in crucial moments, and it doesn't stop here, because Williams was 12th in deep targets per game last year. And if you were to look at this on a per game basis, he was actually top 10 with 1.6 per game. So he possesses the rare combo of a red zone role and downfield usage. And his 2021 success was recently rewarded. Let me explain. The Chargers gave Williams a 3-year, $60 million deal, and he's now a top 10 paid wide receiver in the league. And this specific year, he's the highest paid wide receiver on the Chargers. And all of this incentivizes continued cheat code usage for Williams. Now check out these quarterback cheat codes. The quarterback cheat codes are easy to remember. You want guys who have mobility, rushing upside. So right here is the rushing leaders from last year. Jalen Hurts led the NFL, 17 rushing yards more than Lamar Jackson in more games. But not only do you want the mobility, you also want red zone carries, and these are the leaders in carries per game last year. Now, it's rare to find these guys in the middle to later rounds, but this guy fits the bill. And that's Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts, who last year led all quarterbacks on a per game basis with 2.1 red zone rushes per game, which was 17% more than second place finisher Josh Allen. But fellas, the fun doesn't stop here. And that's because Hurts' role on the ground is reliable. He was second in rush attempts per game and second in rushing yards per game with over 52 per game, which led to Hurts leading the NFL because he had such a big sample on points per dropback, which normally is going to lead to around a top 5 quarterback performance. So needless to say, Hurts is the ultimate cheat code quarterback, and you can get him in like the 6th round of drafts. Now, there's a certain 2nd round running back that actually has the cheat codes to finish number 1 overall in fantasy. But more on that in a second, because we must first discuss what the running back cheat codes are. And it's 2 parts. First off, you want guys who are going to see targets, and the target leaders last year, Austin Eckler, Najee Harris, Leonard Fournette, DeAndre Swift, Cordell Patterson. But you also want guys who are going to command a heavy red zone touch share. Now let's get to that 2nd round running back who fits this description. And it would be Packers running back Aaron Jones, who last year was top 10 in targets in the NFL. And now you could expect this to improve with Devontae Adams gone. Jones in 7 games without Devontae Adams, and yes, they probably schemed more his way, but that's what's going to happen this year. In 7 games without Adams, he saw 69% more targets per game. But that's not all, because Aaron Jones also saw 36%, 35.97 to be exact, of his team's red zone opportunity share, which translated to being top 10 in red zone touches when you factor in his receptions last year. And this is only likely to continue without Adams, who in those 7 games without him, he averages a half a touchdown per game. That's a 16 touchdown pace for Jones. Now, I got to tell you about this 6th round player who also has the wide receiver cheat codes. And this point should prove it alone, because from week 7 to week 13, Elijah Moore was number 4 in fantasy points amongst wide receivers. Only Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, and Debo, arguably the 3 best wide receivers in fantasy last year, scored more during that time. And then in week 13, Elijah Moore suffered an injury. It was a quad injury that ended up ending his rookie season, and some people have forgot how dominant he was, but it was thanks to his wide receiver cheat codes that made him produce in that way. Because Moore as a rookie, yeah, he had 20 deep targets, which was top 25 in the NFL, but because he missed games, when you look at it on a per game basis, he was actually top 5 in deep targets per game. He earned more deep targets per game, 1.8 per game, than DK Metcalf, Jamar Chase, Stephon Diggs, Antonio Brown when he was out there. That is very impressive, again, for a rookie. And believe it or not, that's not all. Because Elijah Moore, as a rookie, ranked 15th against man coverage at getting open against NFL veterans left and right week in and week out, which was actually better than Cooper Kupp last year. And let me explain more how good he was at generating targets. Moore averaged a 18.6% target share, but when you only look at the games that he started last year, he averaged a 20% target share per game, which only about a dozen rookie wide receivers have done over the last decade. And this 20% target share per game that resulted in 7 targets per game, it would have had him on a pace to score 9.3 touchdowns last year. Yet Moore currently goes outside the top 30 wide receivers in the league as the wide receiver 33 in drafts. He's a value. And this next quarterback you can get even later in round 7. And that man's name is Trey Lands, who last year he had 5 red zone carries across his 2.5 starts, which would have put him on a pace to have 34 total red zone carries. And that's interesting because last year Josh Allen led the NFL in quarterback red zone carries, and he had 32, meaning Lance was on pace if he would have had a full season, which he's going to get this year. they've already basically said Jimmy G is gone multiple times. The head coach said he's gone, he's out of here, we're trading him, he's on the market. Well, if that's the case, Trey Lance has massive upside. And yes, quarterback number one in the NFL, overall upside is in the cards. And one more thing, a lot of people overlook this, but Trey Lance, if you look at his season stats, it'll say he averaged 6.3 rushes per game. That is not true because that factors in the games where he just played like 1 or 2 snaps. In his 2.5 starts, he actually averaged 12.4 carries per game, which was 12% more than last year's leader, Lamar Jackson. And earlier we stated that Jalen Hurts led the NFL with 0.7 fantasy points per dropback. Again, it was number 1 in the league. If Trey Lance played more games, he would have qualified, and his points per dropback was 0.89, would have been number 1 by a mile last year. So you want Trey Lance in 2022. I currently have him as a top 10 quarterback, and honestly, he might move all the way up to number 7 by the time the summer's over. I'm about 5 spots ahead of the consensus here. And if you'd like to access those rankings, my top 200, you can see on the screen right here, and a whole lot more, including a $20 Amazon gift card, just click the link in the description and follow the 2 simple steps to secure your supreme cheat sheet for this year. And if for some reason you don't like it, I'll refund you minimum deposit of $10, which is what it takes to get it, and you can keep the $20 gift card. And when you beat your friends by 40 and they ask you how did you do it, only you will know. More information in the description below. So you want Trey Lance, and you also want this next RB, and that's Leonard Fournette, who led all running backs in targets per game last year, and now Rob Gronkowski retired, and Chris Godwin isn't going to be there to start the season. And the question on your mind might be, but what about Fournette's weight? A report came out this summer that Leonard Fournette was overweight by 20 or so pounds, and the Bucs were not happy with him. The problem with this report was it was cited 6 weeks before the report came out, meaning that from the time the report came out, Fournette had 100 days to shed 20 pounds, which is pretty easy work for any professional athlete. And this recent quote by his trainer, his personal trainer, said it was blown out of proportion, these reports. He's in the sauna, if you were to read through this. He's in the sauna. He's just now in the middle of his cardio sessions. And he also stated that this is something that's kind of common for Fournette in the off seasons. So I'm not concerned with this. And you should also check this out. Last year, Fournette saw 50% of his team's red zone opportunity share. That is absolutely elite for a running back. It was tied for 3rd in the league with David Montgomery. Only Alvin Kamara and Jonathan Taylor saw more. Now, here's another way to look at this. His 54 red zone touches on the season, he saw about 4 per game. So you're getting the elite passing game work and a strong red zone role. Yeah, you want Fournette in 2022, and you want this next wide receiver. And that's Seattle Seahawks wide receiver DK Metcalf, who last year was 4th in the NFL, tied for 3rd in end zone targets. The amount of times that when he was targeted, he was in the end zone. That's upside. And to be completely honest with you, it doesn't matter who his quarterback is in those situations. His top 1% size, 6'3", 228 pounds, and his top 1% speed of all time, so this combination is extremely rare, running a 4.33 at the combine. This combo makes it easy on any quarterback. And here's how that's gone so far. Metcalf currently has 29 touchdowns his first 3 years in the league, and as he becomes more of a savvy veteran, his touchdowns have increased every year to a season high 12 last year, which this is 81% more than Devontae Adams saw in his first 3 years in the league. That's the type of trajectory DK Metcalf as a very young player is on here. Plus, Metcalf was used downfield often. That's another one of our cheat codes for wide receivers. He was 3rd in the NFL in deep targets with 30. Here's another way to look at this. Metcalf has the deadly combo for fantasy: frequent red zone usage and downfield targets. Yet his quarterback situation has dropped him 3 rounds in drafts. He right now goes as the wide receiver 25, and you can get him sometimes in round 6. This clearly, in my opinion, makes him a major value. So these fantasy cheat codes, knowing them, it's good news. But I do have a warning. It's potentially bad news for some of you fantasy players. If you want to see what that warning is, be sure to check out this video right here before your friends do. And if you made it to this point in the video, also hit that subscribe button, you beautiful people.